We're moving into your parents' house. They've moved to the countryside, right? So that mansion is ours now." "What are you talking about?" "My name is Jill. I'm approaching my 30s. I have a good relationship with Jeff, whom I married a few years ago, and my in-laws who live nearby are very kind people. I get along well with my biological parents and lead a peaceful life. At some point, my parents, who had lived in New York for a long time, decided to retire in a remote part of the countryside. The city is indeed too noisy. It's inconvenient, but the countryside life suits us better. Although we lived in the city because of my father's job, my parents were raised in the countryside. If they wish to return to the countryside, I have no reason to object. The house they once lived in the city will remain vacant for a while. So I decided to take over the management occasionally and sent my parents off to the countryside, but this led to an unexpected problem. It happened a few months after my parents started their life in the countryside. After dinner one evening, I was talking with Jeff while looking at the photos sent by my parents. So they both seemed to be really into their vegetable garden and enjoying their life in the countryside. Wow, they like the countryside. I'm surprised because I thought they liked living in the city. They were originally raised in the countryside. Hey Jeff, have you ever thought about living in the countryside in the future? I casually asked Jeff about our future. Jeff was halfway through listening to my story when he suddenly stood up. Surprised by his urgency, he took out his smartphone and began to make a call. "Dad, Mom, our plan might work. Let's do as planned tomorrow." What, Jeff? What happened?" "I can't wait any longer. First, we have to bring over my parents' stuff." Leaving those words behind, Jeff hurried to the entrance and rushed out. I heard the car, so he must have gone somewhere far. I had no idea what was going on. Moreover, there was only one car at home, so I had no way to follow Jeff. I had no choice but to wait vaguely for his return. That night, I waited alone for Jeff until late. He didn't answer his smartphone, and he didn't reply to my emails either. Eventually, I decided to go to sleep alone. However, the next morning, an unexpected turn of events awaited. "Hey Jill, wake up. We have to pack quickly." Jeff, you're back? Also, where have you been? What do you mean by packing?" I asked him, confused as I had just woken up. He answered excitedly. "We're moving into your parents' house. They've already moved to the countryside, right? So that mansion is ours now." "What are you talking about?" "Come on, hurry up. Let's start with my stuff. You start packing too. My parents will come to help us soon." Rubbing my eyes, I managed to understand that Jeff wanted to move. Judging by the keywords like countryside and mansion, it seems he is aiming for the residence where my parents once lived. Normally, I would avoid discussing this with others, but my childhood home, my parents' old house, is a luxurious mansion worth $1 million. Before I could respond to this realization, Jeff grabbed his luggage and hurriedly left the house. Within a few minutes, my in-laws arrived at our house. "Jill, have you finished packing yet? Well, I suppose you won't need much of your stuff." "That's right. Since she's going to live with as a daughter-in-law, she wouldn't need much. 2 sets of summer clothes and 2 sets of winter clothes should be enough, right? dispose of everything else and come. The room in the shoe area right next to the entrance will be enough for you, right? Make sure to bring minimal belongings. Come on, how long are you going to daze around? Why don't you hurry up and come to the new house? Our stuff was already brought over yesterday. My in-laws, who had been kind until then, began saying strange things. What are you talking about? When I asked in a lowered voice due to their sudden rude remarks, they replied, "We mean exactly what we said. From today, you are working in our house as a maid. Of course, do continue working outside as usual, but we'll manage your salary, so be prepared for that." Why? Both of you, what has happened? You have been so kind until now. I still tried to hope this was a nightmare. No, I wanted to believe it was a nightmare. But as if to shatter that hope, they declared, "We were kind to you because we were after your wealth. We were considerate because your parents are wealthy. It's been tiring to pretend all these times, but now we can drop the act altogether." That's right. Your parents aren't planning to come back from the countryside, are they? Then you should serve us from now on. The reason they had been kind to me was due to my family's wealth. Indeed, honestly, my family is financially better off than an average household. But to think that my in-laws saw us in such a way. Ah, Jill, have you finally woken up? And you haven't packed yet? Well, never mind, we didn't plan to take your stuff anyway. Anyway, can you help us unpack at the new house? Although I was still dazed due to the shock, Jeff spoke to me in the same way. I understood then that Jeff was also after my wealth, just like his parents. However, there were 3 of them, and resistance was impossible. I was put in the car and taken away to my parents' residence. The biggest room is mine, as I am the master of the house. Jill, don't enter it unless you're cleaning. I'll take the hobby room for myself. It has plenty of bookshelves, and I've always been envious of it. Then, I guess I'll use the room that used to be the study. Studying is a man's dream after all. My parents' house was in disarray, and it bore no resemblance to its former self. When Jeff left the previous day, he must have taken the keys to this house without permission. And during the night, my in-laws must have secretly moved in their belongings. The interiors my parents loved were all pushed to the corners, and the house was filled with items my in-laws and Jeff preferred. This curtain is in poor taste, but maybe we could sell it for some money. These foreign magazines might be valuable too, right? Let's sell them and have a lavish barbecue party. They laughed joyously as they trashed the house. Stop doing whatever you want. This isn't Jeff's house, nor is it your house, right? Even as I tried to stop them, they didn't listen. Quiet. If no one's using it, it's no problem if we take over it. That's right, I've always dreamt of living in a large city mansion. Anyway, can you mop the whole house? The robot vacuum is fine, but a mop suits you better, Jill. Watching the house I grew up in being destroyed, I felt a deep despair. Why is it being destroyed so carelessly? Still, I cannot give up here. My parents have moved to the countryside, but I must protect this house. Do you really think it's okay to do as you please like this? Huh? Why are you acting so high and mighty? This house is mine now. I can do whatever I want in my own house. When I confronted Jeff, he acted as if he owned the place. I'm truly shocked. You all don't understand anything. Completely fed up, I decided that showing evidence would be more effective than arguing. I took out my smartphone and contacted someone. What are you doing? Don't tell me you're asking for help from your parents in the countryside. That's pointless. By the time they come from the countryside, this house will already be ours. From now on, we will change this house into ours completely, so there's no turning back. They seemed to think I was trying to say something to my parents, but I left their misunderstanding unaddressed. There was no need for me to correct them. After all, the truth would soon come to light. And as I expected, everything was resolved in 10 minutes. Jill, sorry to keep you waiting. Nick. Sorry for calling you out of the blue. No need to apologize. Nick? What are you doing here? Seeing that I had called my brother Nick, Jeff turned pale. Nick then looked sternly at Jeff. Jeff, what is this all about? Can you explain? Well, you see. The moment Nick arrived, Jeff's face turned ashen. And there was a good reason for that. Nick was, in fact, a benefactor to Jeff. A few years ago, during an economic downturn, Jeff had lost his job. He had no particular qualifications and had a hard time finding a new workplace. At that time, Nick helped him and gave him an opportunity to work at his company. Frankly, he's not the type I'd hire if he weren't your husband, Jill. But for the sake of my beloved sister, I want him to work hard. Nick, I appreciate this. I will never forget this favor. Given these circumstances, Jeff was in no position to defy him. Pale-faced, he struggled to find an excuse. Jill's room is the room in the shoe storage area, and you're selling our parents' decorative items? What are you talking about? But an empty house deteriorates fast. I thought it would be better if we live here and manage it. Even so, why would Jill's room be the one in the shoe storage area? And having your parents manage her salary is clearly abnormal, isn't it? That is. Jeff continued to desperately make excuses, but Nick would not accept them. Despite Jeff's attempts to escape the situation, Nick spoke calmly. First of all, what do you mean by living in my house without permission? No, Nick, that's not it. I meant I was going to live in your parents' house. I checked with Jill, but it seems you really don't understand. This house was only borrowed by our parents from me. It's officially under my name, and it's my house. Jeff was shocked by Nick's words. However, by now, Nick and I were beyond exasperated. Because, after all, it was an obvious fact. When Jeff was laid off, it wasn't just him who was saved by Nick. Around the same time Jeff was dismissed, my father's company was also facing a financial crisis. At that time, my father was preparing to sell all his assets to clear his debts, but Nick stepped in to help. If you sell the house, Dad, we would lose our home too. So don't worry, I'll buy it under proper terms, and you two won't have to struggle with your living conditions. Since then, my parents had been living with assistance from Nick. The reason they moved to the countryside was not just because they liked it there. They also didn't want to burden Nick any further. You vandalize my house and treat my sister terribly. You're not only incompetent at work, but also have a terrible personality. I see no reason to keep employing someone like you. What? No. Nick, are you serious? Do you think I'm not serious? As Nick declared him fired, Jeff started to panic. Then he turned to me and threw out these words. But if I lose my job, Jill will be in trouble. We are married, after all. However, Jeff's statement was out of place. I no longer wanted to trouble my brother, and I made my position clear. What are you talking about? Considering what you've done to me, divorce is obvious, isn't it? A. So even if you lose your job now, it has nothing to do with me. Honestly, I think it serves you right. Don't say such things. It will be tough for my parents too. Hearing Jeff's words, my in-laws, who had been silent until then, also spoke up. That's right. Jill is kind-hearted. She wouldn't do such a thing. We had a good relationship, didn't we? Did you forget what you said to me this morning? Do you really think I would worry about your future now? That's impossible. At that moment, Jeff and my in-laws realized that my brother and I were not going to give in. Eventually, they followed my brother's orders and removed their belongings from our family home. Later, the family lawyer, whom my brother had contacted, was present as we discussed the divorce. Look, I'm going to be unable to work soon, so transfer all the property to me. Jill loves me, so she will surely allow it, right? We also rely on Jeff's income. Jill, please help us. Jill, have mercy on us. They were desperate to get their hands on the property. However, I had no intention of showing them mercy. I just checked, but you had thrown away my personal belongings without permission. That included valuable jewelry, you know. We thought it was cheeky for you to own such things, so we threw them away for you. Ah, you've admitted to throwing them away, so you'll have to compensate me. A. Mom, what are you doing? The discussion was completely led by us from the beginning to the end. Jeff and his parents had thrown away many of my belongings from the previous night until then. This included unopened cosmetics and valuable accessories, as well as some very expensive out-of-print books. Why do I, who have lost my job, have to suffer like this? This is terrible. As a result, Jeff relinquished most of his assets, and the divorce was finalized. But it didn't end there. My in-laws, who had claimed to be financially strained due to their pension, ended up having to pay me compensation for their harassment. Why do we have to pay even though we are on a pension? Why is a daughter-in-law acting superior to us in the first place? That's really true. We feel no respect from her. They accused me of being a cold person, but that was irrelevant. I refused their request to reduce the amount and demanded the promised compensation. After the divorce was finalized, my brother and I decided to demolish our family home and sell the land. I really want to keep this house because it's full of memories, but it would be unpleasant and troublesome if Jeff and his family come here, right? So let's sell the house. Yes, I think that's better too. This place is inconvenient for both you and me to commute from. The house was filled with many memories, and I would have liked to keep it as it was. However, the thought of Jeff and his family stepping foot there is extremely unpleasant and would also be a hassle, making it a major burden for us. We have many photos taken as a family, and these photos will forever remain vivid in our hearts. These memories will never be forgotten. But what is even more important is completely cutting ties with Jeff and his family and starting a new chapter in our lives. This allows us to embrace new happiness and a peaceful life. Afterward, I continue to work actively as before, enjoying my days. My brother is also expanding his business, leading a busier yet more fulfilling life. Additionally, my parents have passionately embarked on a new endeavor of growing different types of vegetables, planning to take on the challenge of cultivating new varieties. I heard that Jeff and his parents are facing financial and professional difficulties and have even lost their place to live. However, their situation has no impact on us now. We are now focused on saying goodbye to the memories with Jeff and his family and starting a completely new life. What we understand is that there are things far more valuable than money or the luxury of a house.